We back. We back. We back. We back. We back. We back.
Hey, we took a week off, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Welcome into the bag. I am Robbie C. ABB, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. Hey, we're just I was like, yeah, a day or two we'll wrap up from Worlds. We're still wrapping up from Worlds, but getting ready to roll into Hyzer Club and roll into USDGC. So it's that time of the year.
Yeah, full steam ahead. Also, reality show.
Oh, shoot. Yeah,
the reality show's in like 2 weeks for you guys.
Yeah, okay. So, reality show, Hyzer Club, USDGC, then we got Black Friday, then we got Christmas, and then boom, we're in 2025. And just like that.
Dude.
And it's hockey season. Like, let's just throw that out there.
College football starts back this weekend. Yep. NFL starts back in 2 weeks. Oh, man, it's a wild time. But speaking of wild times, we have a wild sponsor for today's video. We want to hear a quick word from our sponsor. All right, Brad. You said you're wrapping up. We're wrapping up. I honestly, I feel the exact same way on this side of things. Like Lindsay's looked at me and she's like, Robbie, you just look a little dead. Like, that's how we feel. We feel so excited. The dogs are like, you just look a little, look a little dead inside. And I think part of it was like, I was up there the week before Worlds. So a nice like 10 to 15 day trip, it felt like. But Brad, Worlds experience. Give us like a couple minutes synopsis of your Worlds experience.
Well, it was pretty incredible. I mean, I think there was like, I was trying not to get like too hyped up about it because I know how things get, right? We're excited to have Worlds here locally. We're excited to have all the pros here. We're excited to play the courses that you all see all the time and we play all the time, and even a new one. And I was trying not to get like too hyped up about it because I didn't want to be like let down. And I will say it like definitely delivered to all the hype. It was just really cool to see like a high caliber event. And I really do think we'll talk a little bit more in the episode. There are definitely some improvements that can be made and some things that can like maybe make it even better. But at the end of the day, I think for a first run at it, it was pretty spectacular. It did, especially Ivy Hill. Ivy Hill felt like a PGA event. Like it was just beautiful. Like they really at the golf course, they kind of just rolled out the red carpet for us. They had like nice tents going on. They had catering, although the catering was some left to be desired, but the vendor village was there. It just looked really professional. They had air conditioning trailers. They had VIP areas where you could just like see great. The views were incredible. And really the weather was pretty awesome. So overall, I think it was set up pretty well. There's some logistic things, like I said, that we'll dive into that were maybe a little left some improvements to be made, but I think that's with any event like this that comes into an area that's never had it before. I think there's a lot of lessons. As far as like fan experience, a lot of you I met, and I have to say I was so glad to meet everybody. It's always very humbling to meet you all and just, hear how much you like the show, hear how you like Robbie and I talking every week. And it's just know we're always grateful for that. And it was incredible meeting all of you. Had some really special experiences too that people shared with us. And I think that was pretty great. So I think always the best part, whether it's Worlds or USDGC or even Battle for Bedford, even smaller events that we do, it's always just super great meeting fans and meeting everybody that really makes what we do, what the PDGA does, what the pros do possible. So that was awesome. Got to meet a couple of the pros, some friends of the channel, some vendors and companies that we work with all the time. It was great making those connections and putting faces to names and shaking some hands. That was pretty awesome. So just overall, I would just give it a very, very, very solid first experience. The only other events I've really attended were, USDGC and a couple like A-tier events. So it's like A-tiers and lower, and then boom, majors. So that's really my only experience. I feel a little spoiled by that just because, again, USDGC is such an iconic, epic event that's run by the best of the best, Chad and Jonathan. I think they do such a good job. And, Worlds run by Nate Heinold himself, who does, Ledgestone and some other things, and feel very, very spoiled with that. I think everyone heard there was some controversy that happened during the week with New London. There was a big campaign, people getting very riled up about it. And so that, I think everyone did a really good job not to let that sour anything. And, just for any of you who are wondering and are just kind of curious about that, or have just seen or heard utterings of New London going away. New London's not going away. There's just going to have to be a redesign for some of the holes. The logistics there are just in the works, and I promise people are working behind the scenes on all that. It's just a matter of when and how and getting the crew together and doing that. And I promise, just hearing from Bedford County tourism and the economic development team themselves, they value disc golf. They value the world championships and the tour championships that are coming next year. And they understand how important disc golf is to our area and to tourism and the economy. So they're 100% pro disc golf, and they're going to do whatever they can to help us try to work this out. So I think, yeah, really, it was overall a great experience. I don't think that tainted too much. And it was just really fun to watch a lot of the pros, do what they do. See them on Jomez all the time, see them on coverage, see them on social media. And, a lot of them just normal people, very nice people. Some not so nice, but we'll talk about that a little later.
I completely agree. For those of you who watch the video podcast side of things, you'll see that I disappeared for a second. We are having some plumbing issues at our house, and the guy showed up a nice 4 hours early for that. So what a good time. But on the other side, AVB, completely agree. Getting to meet people, I think, is like, I've told Lindsay before, even if I went to a Disc Golf Pro Tour event and I never sold a thing, it would feel so worth it just to get to meet y'all, the listeners and the viewers and things like that. It's just such a fun experience. And I feel like for a Hunter and a Trevor, right, they are such public faces that it's like, oh, like, us, you connect. Like, it's less of a shock when you're at a disc golf event. But I feel like even for you and Jason, who are foundation personalities, it's got to feel fun and exciting that, like, oh, we listen in the bag, we love it. Oh, love when you, like, there's just it's a fun connection. It kind of shows you that the silliness we do on camera at times, people actually listen and care, which is so satisfying. In terms of the New London stuff, man, I'm with Hunter and Trevor, and that I think it really does give the course a chance to get even better, which is kind of crazy to think about, because you got to think Paul's a better course designer now than he was even when he designed it several years ago. So a chance for a new facelift on it. Yeah. Even better.
And the holes that are in danger are, like, arguably the worst ones. So yeah. I think it's fine. I think initially everyone's reaction was, oh no, we just got this really cool thing. Now it's in danger. You're going to just rip it away from us. And it's just, and at the beginning, they knew that going into designing the course that this was going to happen eventually. It just happened now. Yeah. So it's okay. It's going to be great. We're still going to have a top tier pro level disc golf course there. It's just a matter of, logistics, as it always is. So I think it's perfectly fine. No one should get upset about it, and it's going to be a great time. I'm personally looking forward to the redesign. Like, how exciting is that?
Dude, yeah, I'm completely with you. So we asked some questions about, I guess I like quick summary of my experience. Really enjoyed it. It was my first Worlds experience. The courses were phenomenal. We expected pros to shred New London, and they sure did. Yep. While the 11 under from Isaac and AB was insane, the most impressive run that I saw at New London was Jake Wolf, because the shot selections that man had to dice up New London were actually insane to me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, oh, you want to play hole 6, the hardest hole in Virginia? Obviously, everyone's playing it wrong. It's a sky forehand roller to the corner, another sky forehand roller that goes all the way down that part of the fairway and curls up at the corner, and then you throw a forehand turnover into the green. Bang! That's how you play hole 6. That's no wonder I'm so bad at that hole. I haven't thrown any sky forehand rollers.
Right? Yeah. I mean, just let me do that. I have that skill for sure.
Yeah. That What a time. What a time. So I got to caddy for Sullivan Tipton, who is local to the Birmingham area. Ended up performing, got a top 10 at Worlds, which was super, super cool. Most people are going to know if you watch coverage, the shot you're going to see from him was that throw in on 14.
Yeah.
Insane. Sully was so funny because in the post round, like post on socials, he was like, Robbie told me this wasn't golf, so we're not laying up. Absolutely. What an embellishment. Sully is too kind. 100% our plan was to lay that up. It came out of his hand and we were all like, oh no, that is too far away from the hill. And the basket got in the way. So super cool. What a highlight moment. Zones, man. I guess they just go in the basket.
They do.
Crazy times. So yeah, just really, really fun. Got to be part of some really electric cards, but we did ask some questions on social media, so I want to answer some of them. One person asked, did you lose it when you were on Calvin's card at Worlds? Calvin is about the only person in disc golf that I get like fanboyish around. And it was definitely something, it was special. I spent more time talking to Zach Melton, who was his caddy, which was fantastic. I think, and I dropped a video on my channel yesterday, for when y'all are watching this. And I think players, and Brad, you probably even saw this from like where the foundation booth was positioned at Ivy. Pros basically had two choices walking from parking. They could either walk through Vendor Village or they could walk out and around by the road. Neither like amazing options, but to get the pros convenient parking, that's what they had to do. Yeah. And I saw it happen so many times where like the pros were like on a mission heading to warm up, heading to do their thing. And then fans would stop them. Now, I don't think it's rude on the fans to do that. I don't think it's rude on the pros to be like, hey, I don't have that much time to talk. I've got to get ready. I mentioned like to Jason that if I knew I had to be at that place at 2:30 so that I wasn't rude, I would leave to make that 4-minute walk at like 2:00 so that if people stopped to chat, I was fine. Like there was room for that. And I'm nowhere near the level of the pros. So I knew while I was going to get to be around Calvin, I really wanted him to shoot hot. So I wasn't trying to chit chat with the man while he was working. So it was fun to be in like around and see that. And there were a couple of moments where like Zach would make a joke and make fun of him. And like we would all jump in on it. So that was a great time. But some other questions. Brody criticized when we were on debate night. I don't know. I just want to say that we were on debate night. We sat there and I ate dinner for like 20 minutes before we even started filming, and everyone was like chatting, yakking, having a good time. And then the podcast started and people were commenting on that episode like, does Brody just hate listening to Robbie? What's going on? And guys, if I'm being honest, I don't think so. Brody is also just a human being who like gets so mentally focused that like how I interpreted it is he just really wasn't there mentally for the podcast because he was thinking about tour life that was about to happen. And then I said some crazy stuff and that triggered him, and therefore like he went off. So the walk at Ivy, did you get to walk any rounds with the boys?
No, not really. I walked a few like holes, but I didn't have enough time to like walk the course.
Okay. But you played the flex start at Ivy, right?
Yeah. So I've played a version of the course. Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking about the walk at Ivy, I wanted to, even for locally, for y'all, if you had to compare the walk at Ivy to the walk at Independence, how comparable are they to you?
Well, one, I think they're very different walks. I think Independence is much nicer because you have a lot of shade. And it's like kind of like a hike, like it's beautiful. And then, you know, Ivy Hill, you're just like cooking the whole time. You're just out in the field cooking, like in the sun the entire time. Yeah. Independence is still kind of a hike. It is a hike. Like it is a long course as far as like, you know, mileage you put in. Elevation, there's a surprising amount of elevation change at Ivy Hills. So I think that's maybe kind of what you're alluding to there is like, as far as elevation up and down, I think Ivy's more elevation change than Independence for sure. It's longer than Independence for sure.
Yeah.
Again, I think just the thing that Independence has on Ivy's is just like, it just seems like a hike. It's beautiful and it's shaded, and Ivy Hill, you're just out in the sun the whole time. But Ivy's, it's long. It's a long course. It's up and down. I don't even know. I haven't watched any coverage. I've been trying to just to see like okay, it's always fun to look like, okay, what's it look like on camera? What's it look like in real life? And I'm curious to see like Ivy, how it plays on camera versus in real life. Which hole is it that you're like way up on the top of the hill and you throw all the way? It's like an 800 some foot hole. You throw all the way down across the valley and then back up the hill again. 10. Yeah. I just want to, because that is so much elevation change. I would be curious to see exactly what the number is from tee to the bottom of the hill to the basket. But I want to see what the translation looks like on film. I mean, what do you think? You've played both.
Yeah, I thought that the hike at Ivy personally was not as crazy as people talked it up to be. I think there were a couple moments that were like, oof, this is steep. Hole 10 that you're talking about, for sure. Because you literally, everyone throws their shot, and like a good tee shot on that hole, you're almost to the bottom of that hill all the way down there. And a bad tee shot on that hole, you're still somewhat far down the hill.
Yeah.
And then you just throw essentially directly across. So you walk all the way down the hill, catch your breath for 30 seconds while someone throws, and then you walk a little bit more. And then once you hit the bottom of the hill, you're straight back up to a putting green where putt. Okay, and you just keep hiking, and hole 11's pad is probably another 200 feet straight uphill behind that pad. Like I know when we played that hole on day 2, Sully had a 30-footer, but below the basket, and he was like, I'm laying it up. Like he's inside the circle, and he laid it up because the rollaway potential was insane on hole 10.
Yeah.
And I will say that I don't know why more people, when talking about, like, all these people talked about the sloped green of 14. And I understand that, like, there were rocks on it. There were those stairs. I think that was what we should be talking about much more than the slope of it all, because I'm partially convinced that the slope on 10 was more aggressive than the slope on 14.
Yeah.
And the hill was just larger too. And there was OB at the bottom of that hill, as opposed to a big open space where, like, Niklas final day rolled out into that open space. If that same roll happens on hole 10, I think Niklas is OB all the way down the hill.
Yeah.
So I feel like less people had that comparison, and that confused me. But the hike wasn't that bad. There were a couple moments that were like, oh, I need to catch my breath. That like really hole 10 when you finish playing it, and hole 15, that long par 5 up the hill.
Yeah.
Because it was another one that the walk from the basket of 15 to the tee of 16.
Yeah.
That was a hole in itself. Like it was like 350 feet.
Yeah. It was there's quite a bit right there. Yeah. And I think the thing that makes Ivy, like the hike on that, a lot more manageable, or does it not seem as bad, is because it's just even terrain. It's like well manicured golf course. Yeah. So definitely more manageable, but definitely longer. Definitely a long course.
Yeah. So any pros that were like, hey, this was tough. Like I agree. I don't think it was easy of a walk, but
it's doable for most people, I think.
If you are a professional athlete, I think you should be in at least decent enough shape to be able to walk that course.
Oh yeah.
So, okay. So the meat of the episode that we really wanted to dive into is I got to caddy for Sully. And I want to talk like just caddies in disc golf in general. Because I think about like a caddy in golf is just a more complicated game than what we do. I'm not trying to say that disc golf is not complicated. In fact, the reason that I had to disrupt part of the middle of this episode is because a plumber was at my house and my disc golf room is where the leak is going into. And he was like, so the Frisbee room you had, and so I was like, yeah, just smiling into it. And then when I told him I was recording a podcast, when he walked in, he was asking me like, huh? Like you could tell just the shock on his face of like, yeah, this flies this way, all that, the initial reactions. Right. So I think our game is still complicated, but from the caddy perspective, we have some questions talking through it, but I want to talk, like, start the conversation, ABB, from if you were to bring a caddy for you at the amateur level, do you think a caddy would help is my first question. And if so, where would they help? Like, what would you want the caddy to be doing help wise? Or where do you think the caddy would fall short? That's why you wouldn't need a caddy if your answer is like, no, I wouldn't want a caddy.
So I think we should define caddy, because I think a golf caddy and like a disc golf caddy as it currently exists are two very different things. And we talked a little bit offline about this, but there's, they're like, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about this, but there's like kind of full-time caddies starting to kind of pop up on the pro tour. But a lot of people, they may, like Chris Dickerson's the example where he's carrying his bag, he's on his thing, and his wife is walking with him. And I don't know what type of relationship they have with on the disc golf course, whether she's just kind of like letting him play his game and she's just there for support, or what that looks like. So I think a caddy would be great in the sense of what an actual golf caddy would be. I really don't want a caddy to carry my bag. I like carrying my bag. I just feel weird. Like, I've played rounds where someone will carry my bag and I don't really like it, or I'll like hook it on the back of the stroller. I don't know. It's just like something, like, I feel like I'm like in the zone if I have my bag, taking it on and off. I know where my stuff is. I know it seems like a little weird, but where I think I would really like a caddy in like tournament play would be someone who like knows my game and both the good and bad parts, so I don't make bad decisions. I think someone double checking my shot sometimes, or having someone to be like, hey, I think I'm going to throw this here. What do you think? And they're like, oh no, you've been grip locking that all day. You probably should go to this instead. You're not having that advice. And I think really, and maybe this is just like me being an amateur still trying to play tournaments, but I love like some wind reads. Like, I think that would be like just someone to bounce that off of. So, I'm stepping up to hole 18 or 17 at Timbrook, and there's like a crosswind, and I'm pulling out my flippy FD and having my caddy be like, hey, there's a crosswind here. It's pretty aggressive. You should rethink your selection there. I think that would be really helpful to have. I think mental game and like wind read and like environmental things like would be really, really great. Cause I think when I'm in the zone, like trying to play well, I tend to make bad decisions because I like second guess something instead of like having someone to bounce it off of. So hopefully that is kind of like an answer to your question. I think they're definitely, and like on a pro level, if I'm talking pro level, I think, someone like you who is a coach for both like mental and like game wise, someone like Sully, who's maybe more of like an up and coming person. I think there's something good about like having someone to bounce ideas off of, or like trusted advice, that like someone who knows what they're doing, to just like keep them on track. Whereas someone like Ricky, who does have more of like a professional caddy or a full-time caddy, they are more for like, they know what Ricky needs. They know like when he needs water, they know what discs he needs cleaned off. They know like when to speak, when not to speak. I think that's more on like the high level caddy. They like really are there to kind of like just support them from a like almost like physical standpoint. You know what I mean? So so they're not worried about the little things like, oh, I need to wipe my disc off, or I need to do this, or I need to like fill my water bottle or whatever. I think that's probably more that level of caddy that I think is really important. So the pro can just like focus on what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you nailed a lot of good things there. Trying to decide which one to unpack first.
Well, let me ask you, you've played MPO quite a bit and you played quite a few tournaments. Like for you, because you are a coach, you are, I would say, a really good caddy. Do you find benefit in a caddy, or do you feel like that gets in your way?
Yeah, the statement you made about like I like to carry my own bag. I think that lots of caddies end up being pack mules more so than anything. Like it's just you're there to hold the bag, and for certain players, it's like that throws them off their rhythm. Exactly what you were saying. Of I like having my bag. I like doing that.
And that's not what a golf caddy does. A golf caddy is like a very trusted like intellect. Like they know the course, they know the wind, they know your game. Like they are like, I don't think 7-iron is a good choice here because of X, Y, Z. You know, like they're trusted. They're on the green with the golfer, helping them read the green. That's a partner versus a pack mule, which is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like I had my middle brother, caddied for me at a tournament up in North Georgia. And he went out before the tournament and he literally made a caddy book that was like, all right, hole 12, it's 2 rolling hills. The second hill is like 20 feet below the tee box or below the tee box, but it's only 10 feet above the green or something like that. And so he had those notes and it was like to get to this hill is 230 feet. And bang, like those kind of notes. So that when we were standing there and we were like, okay, I'm in the ditch between the second hill and the basket. We just knew, even if we didn't pull a rangefinder out, which is something that's also different in golf compared to disc golf, is that in disc golf, we're allowed to use rangefinders during tournament rounds. In golf, you are not.
Right.
Like you have to have that information readily available. So that was so helpful having that. But in terms of like the knowing your shots and things like that, it's an interesting world from a caddy's perspective because you don't want to, if Brad's stepping up to hole 17 at Timbrook and he's got that flippy FD in his head or in his hand, I have to, as the caddy in that decision, know that if I say something, I'm going to throw you off of your game. Like no matter what it is, if I'm like, hey, Brad, I don't think that's a great decision. If you decide to lock in and be like, no, it is, I've started a seed of doubt inside of your head, and that's not good. And then if I hand you another disc and I'm like, don't throw the flippy FD, what if you went with, you said you took your vultures out. I'm trying to think what's in the vulture slot right now.
I have a vulture in there. So
I was like, hey, throw a vulture instead, right? Then now, not only now that seed of doubt is still there because it is, maybe I should throw my FD, but he's talked me into this. So you have this gamble that you have to go through of, unless I think it's a terrible choice, you kind of just got to hype your player up and say, send it, like go for it. We had that happen a couple times on the course where I saw Sully step up and he was like, oh, I'm going with a Quake here. When in my mind, it was like, oh, I think you should throw a Raptor. Like I think the Quake is not enough distance, but he's confident in that selection. He's picked that selection. So the best I can do is I ask a simple question of like, oh, are you on Quake here? And he's like, yeah, for sure. And then that most of the time created a dialogue that was him almost justifying it out loud. And most of the time, he ended up throwing the disc that he selected. But a couple times, I would just simply ask the question, oh, are you going this here? Or what are you throwing here? And it gave him a chance to process it. I think that's something that disc golfers who really struggle with disc selection just need to vocally process what they're doing more often. Because most of the time, if you just talked it out, you would realize this is not a great choice. Like, I should not throw this. So that was my role as the caddy, was to implement those. And I even mentioned there was one time that I failed him like entirely, and it cost him multiple strokes because he on hole 6 at New London, super long hole, but you go down this hill. And I remember looking at a shot during our Foundation All-Stars, and I was like, oh, this is probably a mid-range or a fairway driver. And I looked and it was like 381 feet, even though it's downhill, but it felt long.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I got to rip this. Sully was not super far forward in front of that spot. And he was like, it's just a zone turnover into the green. And in my mind, I was like, I think a zone is not enough disc. Like, I do not think it is. But it was round one. We hadn't built that relationship yet. And also, maybe Sully just crushes zones. Like, I don't know. And so that's where not knowing his distances and his distance potential on disc also hurts. So I was not as informed a caddy as I could have been. And sure enough, he lands like 10 feet short of clearing the OB. So there I'm kicking myself like, oh, I got to say more. So it is you want to like empower your player. But like Jaron asked, Robbie, when you caddy for a pro, do they commonly ask for advice from you or do you just carry the bag? I would say most of the time it's you carrying the bag. The biggest help that I feel like a caddy brings is distraction. So I want to pivot this to Brad. When you played that tournament round at Ivy, it probably took y'all like 3 hours. It was 2.5, 3 hours to play that. And it was what, you, Jason, Nate, and did y'all have a fourth or was it just three of you?
Yeah, we had, oh my gosh, from Overthrow. Dakota. Wow, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Bang. So you had Dakota with you. So you have this experience. And did you talk about things that weren't disc golf in between the holes?
Not a lot. It was a lot of disc golf. It was like a more of like, oh, I can't believe I threw that shot. Oh, that OB is crazy. Didn't even know it was there. This course is going to be. It was a lot of disc golf talk for sure.
Yeah. And when you got to the end of the round, how did you mentally, physically, we know, like we talked about, it's a long course, elevation change. So we know physically you were going to be exhausted. How did you feel mentally on the other side of your Ivy round?
I've never come so close to giving up on a round of disc golf in my whole life. I was mentally done on hole 16. Like I was like, I don't even know if I can do the rest of this course. It wasn't a physical thing. Yes, it was a lot of that, but I'm just like, when you take that much over par, you take that many bogeys and double bogeys, it starts to get to you after a while. So I felt terrible to answer your question bluntly.
No, for sure. Like and I think that's perfectly reasonable. Finding an activity, people, you take like an SAT or a ACT for those, depending on what state you're in. You think back to that high school mentality. And you come out of that 3 to 4 hour standardized test and you are just mentally fried. And you're like, oh, it's because the test was difficult. I don't think it's because the test was inherently that difficult. I think it's because staying mentally focused on one task for that long is exhausting.
Yep.
The same thing could happen, Brad, if suddenly shipping went down and it was like, okay, shipping goes down here. Brad's looking and he's like, the workday, we got 2 hours left in the workday, and I have to spend the next 2 hours just solving this issue. You're going to get home and Kimberly's going to be like, oh, did you like have to move a bunch of stuff? And it's like, honestly, no, I just moved a bunch of stuff at Ivy all morning. But this mental wall that I had to jump was tough. So for caddies, being a distraction between the shots, you don't want to, when they're walking up on the shot, to be like, oh, no, tell me about your favorite Chinese food. Not the right time. But like they throw the shot, there's nothing they can do about it there. So having a chance for them to mentally release from the round, huge. And that's something that like I showed up. Sully wasn't asking me for a lot of like technical, like, oh, should I go flex forehand here instead of a backhand turnover? Like there was not, that question never came up. There was literally, 2 shots of the entire event that Sully was between discs and asked, hey, what do you think I should throw here?
Yeah.
2 of a 5-day tournament where we were throwing so many discs. 2. So like, and one of those was literally, should I run it or should I throw a putt? Like,
right.
Not complicated stuff here. But we did talk about Sully's girlfriend. We talked about life post college. We talked about pickleball. We talked about so many things to pull him out of it mentally. And I think that's where, if you are going to caddy for someone, have that feeling. Like if you ever, as a fan, if you ever end up caddying for me, like anyone, I don't necessarily want you to talk with me about the game inherently. Once again, if you see that I'm doing something very foolish, or if you see a gap, like I find myself scrambling and I'm like laser focused on this gap, but the gap to the left seems wide open, just throw it out there. Hey, have you thought about that gap? Because then I can either be like, oh, no, I didn't entirely, or I'll be like, yeah, I didn't, and therefore here's why. And then I'm verbally processing that again. But just having a conversation and hanging out is it sounds low effort and it sounds unimportant. But just like imagine if I'll throw this out. If that round of 4 that y'all played at Ivy, if I'm there just making conversation for the whole 3 hours, distracting you. Oh, Brad, hey, let's talk about Hawks. Let's talk about Wingspan. For the entirety of a whole, we're just talking about Wingspan. Suddenly there's like a breath of fresh air.
Right. Yeah. I think that would help a ton. So I think to wrap it up, caddies can be good. I think the caddy story, like the story arc of caddies, has to grow a little bit in disc golf to be that distraction, but also like advice. I don't know. I think as an amateur, I think I'll be honest. If we did a round Robbie somewhere, let's just say somewhere like even like a Falling Creek that's not like inherently difficult, but scoreable for me, I guarantee you that if I had you on the bag and if I went out, I went out Friday, I played around by myself on reds or even yellows. Let's just say yellows because they're longer, right? Yellows. And then the next day I had you come out with me and play the exact same round, different day. So I'm cold going into both rounds. I guarantee I'm shooting better with a caddy and like advice and having someone to bounce off to and the distraction you're talking about.
Yeah. And I would even go to say, I think one round is not a good judge for anyone who wants to try this process out, to test this out. I would go an average of like 2 to 3 rounds.
Okay.
And here's why, is because I think that even just making that statement of like, I know it would help because I agree. I think that I could help shave so many strokes off of people's scores if I'm just standing right there to distract, to help talk through whatever it may be, whatever you need from the caddy experience. Knowing that though, there's going to be, I think of it, a great example. We've played 3 rounds of like you versus Jason for the channel.
Yeah.
And the 2 where I'm standing there, you've played worse. I don't think it's because you're nervous because I'm standing there, but there's just different expectations because I'm standing there. And so regardless, it's whether it's I want to play better, whatever it may be, that shifts things. And so it's getting familiar with your player. That's where I was solely round 4 had a large gallery. We had Simon Lizotte, Eagle McMahon, and Calvin Heimberg on the card with us. The gallery was massive. Sully played fantastic. Crushed it. The next day, the final day of Worlds, the crowd was smaller. We had Ricky, Gannon, and Eagle, smaller crowds, and Sully was nervous. So it wasn't the crowd size, but there were different expectations that day. Right. And it just changes how you play. So let the look at caddies coming in as not a one-time fix, but like getting used to it. Because one person asked how long do you think until pro players employ a caddy through a season? Besides people who are in a romantic or significant other relationship, because there's a lot of those on tour. We talked about Brittany with Chris Dickerson. And Brittany's there. Chris probably talked to us. He was on our card day 2. He probably talked to the card collectively. I'm going to go less than 100 words throughout the round. But he talked to Brittany the whole round. He was just processing with her the whole round. And we didn't think it was because Chris was being rude. He was working. Like he was doing his thing. And so Brittany was there for him. But I think of Fern, who is Ricky Wysocki's caddy, and Brad Hammock, who is Paul Ulibari's caddy. Both of them travel, know the game. And like Fern, I'm going to have Fern on my channel to just talk about caddyship in general, because some of the things Fern does, Brad, it was crazy, but it worked. So he had like this frog tog towel that he just had ready almost every time. Ricky would throw a shot and come sit down on his cart, and Fern would like put the frog tog on his neck. And so I asked Fern afterwards, I was like, that's such a good idea. Where'd you get that towel? And he was like, honestly, it's not even to cool him off. It's to mentally distract him with something cold to pull him out of the moment. There's weight on his neck now that distracts him. Like, that's the key. So like things like that, or before the round, Fern pulled every disc out of Ricky's like his cart, laid it on the ground, put the frog tog in water, and then wrung the water out onto all of Ricky's discs, which sounds like a bad idea. You're getting all of my discs wet. But you know how if you've ever like gotten a disc wet and then you dry it off, it's like a little extra tacky. Yeah. Right when it's initially dry. That is what Fern is doing to every disc in Ricky's bag so that it has extra tack before the round starts.
Dang. Yeah, that's next level.
Mind blowing, dude. Like that's you can watch Fern on the tee box. Next time you go to a Pro Tour event, Fern will still be doing it because he's drying all of them off. It was crazy, but like that is what a caddy should like. That's next level being a caddy. So yeah, it was crazy. Brad, I'm going to ask this question because I know we want to make sure that we get out of here and we don't go too long. But I'm going to ask this, and my dog's going nuts, so I got to go check on Moose for a second. So I apologize, listeners, because I feel like I'm in and out of this episode. Life is just life in me right now. If y'all, who was it? Caboose asked the question, if y'all were the coordinators, what would y'all do differently? And then another person asked, Marv Chittenden asked, what do you think it takes to make a good Worlds course? So if you're making adjustments, Worlds is coming back to Lynchburg for or Disc Golf Pro Tour's come back, Pro Tour Championships. What are you changing? What are you doing differently?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things between both courses, I think, was the parking and ticket situation mainly. I mean, so at Ivy specifically, coming in, spectators, vendors, whomever, there's a huge line because what they were doing is they were coming in and they were having people, they were checking tickets, and then you could purchase or verify your purchase and get your wristband while you're waiting in the parking line to get to the parking before even parking. So I think the parking flow was like really, I will say on day 5, it seemed better. So I think they made adjustments as the week went on, but I think parking, and this happened at New London too, just New London was a little earlier in the week, and the big influx of people kind of came, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But man, I think you go like county fair style, you go parking, and Jason inputted on this as well. So I'm going to use his term, like, parking's free. So like you go, you park, and as you're walking up to the event, there's a gate where you're like, okay, do you have your pass? Great. See you. Okay. See you later. Do you need a wristband to verify your purchase? Okay, here you go. And that way you're just like, because I mean, Ivy, there's only one, I mean, there's 2 roads in, but there's only one small one-way road that comes into where you have to park. So that was like kind of a nightmare a little bit. I think that also there was like maybe some of the vending should have been assigned seats, if you will, assigned spots. And like kind of maybe just laid out a little bit better just to make sure flow was a little bit better, so that everyone had enough room. Again, those are just little things that just, but like USDGC using it as the example, like there's a map. I mean, Ivy did have a map for us, like where to go, but it wasn't like blocked off for us. But like USDGC would be like, oh, here's your sign, boom. This is where Foundations 10 is right here. Here's the dimensions. This is where you are. I think that is kind of helpful. Out of all the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things about Ivy, they had like their catering, which, I mean, if I'm being honest, was not great for a golf course, for a country club. It was like, hey, would you like a $16 hot dog? Here you go.
One hot dog, ladies and gentlemen, $15 for a hot dog.
Yeah.
So happy this is getting mentioned.
Yeah. But I mean, just give people some options. Like you can maybe do the catering through the clubhouse and have like maybe like a little nicer meals, right? And charge $15. So like do some like, I don't know. Let's do some steak and something, right? Or whatever. Or grilled chicken breast and some like veggies and some like, like Cajun rice. Like do something like that. So if someone like really wants that experience, they can have it. And the only other option was really the acai bowl place, which was great, but the line was long all the time because it was like those were your two options. So I think like maybe having a different like a food setup and drink. It's even drinks too, right? Like there's not really. I can't just go get a Gatorade very easily, and I think that should be like something that you're able to do personally. Now, New London, they had food trucks there. They had multiple food trucks. They had like Chick-fil-A. They had like Rookies, which is a local like ice cream and cookie place. They had like a Mexican cuisine truck. They had another one the last day, and I think that setup was great. So I think those are maybe the only real changes I would make. I think. Oh, one other thing is at New London. Obviously, I think the trail maps were not marked super accurately, and it was really hard to spectate in the middle of the course. I don't know if there's like a solution for that per se. Just maybe like getting with the locals a little bit more on like, okay, well, if you're trying to go watch hole 10 and you're just only trying to go there, what's the best route to get there? Because I mean, there were times when spectators were walking up 18's fairway when pros were throwing in that fairway. So like that again, I'm not like super criticizing anybody. It was the first time that this has happened, so we have to all learn from those like little things. But those are probably my big three, Robbie, of like just some tweaks to make if I could do it, or if I had the hindsight to go back. I think that's what I would probably pick.
Yeah, I could not agree more with some of those points because the food situation was tough. Like, here's what it resulted in. If I was coming, I actually got to the course later when I knew we were at Ivy because I brought my own food. Yeah, I was like, I will eat a later breakfast / early lunch so that I don't have to pay $15 for either a hot dog, a hamburger, or a bratwurst. That was just a la carte entree. Mm-hmm. There were not chips included. That was extra. You wanted a drink? That was extra. I completely agree. If you wanted beverages, you had to wait in like a crazy long line just to get a drink. It just pulled people, and then a lot of people just left to go get food and then came back and then had to work through that parking situation again. So I agree. The parking was tough. I'm fixing that immediately. It took me my Ivy days, the last day they had it fixed, I will say. The last day, and
much better.
Could also be because I came in later on the last day. Like I came in after FPO was off. Mm-hmm. Like FPO was wrapping it up. They were on like 14 or 15, I think, when I got to the course that day. So I missed.
They did fix it, though. They did like, hey, do you have a pass? Yes. Okay, cool. That's your lot. Okay. Are you general admission? Okay. You're down there and you can get your ticket, your wristband there once you park. Yeah. So they did make that adjustment. And I think it just, ideally.
Took them a while.
Yeah. It's just learning for next time.
Yeah. Because it took me 20 minutes to park both days. Which was crazy. And one of Todd, who I think was the guy running the parking. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't Todd, someone else did. They literally at one point, Brad, super kind. They moved a parking sign so that I could park there because they were like, oh, Robbie, here, don't tell anyone I'm doing this. So here's me telling them, telling the world. So whoops, my bad. But like I got a special parking spot and it still took me 20 minutes to park. I feel so bad for the disc golf fan who rolls up and that's their first experience is like, and I tried to equate it to a major sport. Okay. If I'm going to park at a Braves game, how long does it take me to park? All that. And I get that. Like that's, it just, it was that ticket situation was fascinating. If I'm critiquing the courses, the two changes that I would make if I'm the coordinator. Those are logistics coordinations, easy fixes. You work it out with Ivy, and you're like, you're either operating more stuff or like we have to have outside catering available. Yeah. Those are our options.
You know how far too those like little pop up lemonade stands that also have water and Gatorade would have gone, like that you shake to get your lemonade. Pop two of those puppies up.
Imagine if Foundation we would have sold lemonade. Like if we just sold drinks.
Been crazy.
We would have crushed. We probably would have made more money on drinks than we did on merchandise, which is crazy.
A regular Gooder sunglasses situation.
Yeah, it's insane. So that was tough because I agree. When I was in New London, I was excited to get back to Vendor Village every day because I was like, I'm going to have a Rookie's ice cream sandwich. I can get some tacos. I get Chick-fil-A. Like I can do all that. And then it was like, oh, all I'm going to do is get back to Vendor Village and realize that I am hungry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm loading up on VIP tent stuff.
Yep.
They did try to, as the week went on, they tried to make sure that there was definitely a distinction between the general admissions and VIPs are going this way, VRPs are going that way. I do think there was some false advertising in terms of if you are a VIP member, you get complete access to the course. I do believe that is what they said, all levels. And at multiple points, walking with the card as a caddy, obviously I have immediate access to the players. I heard phrases such as, on this path, VIP members follow me, general admission are going this way, VIP gold and silver coming this way, everyone else going this way, VIP gold's coming this way, everyone else going this way. So it just felt kind of, okay, you paid an extra whatever for your pass, and sometimes it was full access, other times
not so much.
So that was tough. And then Ivy, so close to being an incredible course. I just think if a shot is greater than 350 feet, we need to have OB. Like it's a tough look when you're throwing over 350 feet and OB is within the circle. On intended lines too, because it's like, I watched hole 12, which no one was really talking about hole 12. Hole 12 had OB inside the circle. Like Sully was out of bounds and rolled back inbounds and was in the bullseye.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's crazy. And it's like a 400-foot shot.
Yeah.
So he throws that. He had the box. He throws forehand. Ricky Wysocki, phenomenal forehand. OB. Almost the same vapor trails as Sully, goes OB. Eagle McMahon throws a little longer. OB. Gannon Burr, great forehand. OB. Top players in the world. What are we doing? Hole 17, when the play is skipping off the water, that's a little dicey. Like that so I think that there was just like, get rid of the OB on the back. Give them a chance. If you want highlight run potential, and people are going to be like, oh, well, learn to have some speed control. Isaac controlled his angles, all that. I would agree. I think Isaac out-golfed Ivy, and that is why he won.
Right.
Wholeheartedly. And I do think that sometimes pro players just want to blast shots into the green and go too aggressive. They don't want to have speed control. They just want to blast it. But I would say that it's pretty questionable that all of us who are not as good as them are saying, oh, yeah, you don't have this part of your game. They have speed control. They know how to have speed control, and they can get speed control. When you're throwing a disc 400 plus feet, speed control gets a little dicey. Some things are just out of your control.
Right.
Hole 6, everyone wanted to talk about. I agree. Hole 6 was a really narrow fairway. I don't know why that was that deep, but also if you just ace ran it, you had a 10-foot par at worst.
Right.
Which once again goes back to the whole, why is there OB 10 feet away from the basket? Questionable. But I
think it was score. I think it was score control. I don't think they wanted to get out there and have people shoot 15 down at Worlds.
Yeah, which that's what New London was supposed to be. New London was supposed to be your hold people back.
Yeah.
Because imagine a world that there is 15 out there. Then we see some electric. We don't go into the final day with Isaac having a 3 to 4 stroke lead and thinking pretty much we just need Isaac to screw up.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way that people are going to get back in this is Isaac has to mess up.
Yeah.
That is, it sucks the drama out of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like
For
FPO just kind of imploded on itself, but we at least thought there was a game in front of us heading into that day. And we didn't, none of us wanted to see FPO turn out the way it did in terms of people just collapsing over and over and over again. That would have been even harder to see Isaac do.
Right.
So a lot of potential there. The last question I'll pose and then head to what's new in the warehouse. And I thought this was a very interesting question from Scott Burdett. How would you feel, Brad, from a spectator standpoint of showing a little more coverage of the cut or cash line each day?
I think I'd love that. Because I think it's something that's always in the back of my mind, but you forget to kind of look there, I guess. And that is a storyline in itself, right? Because like Clayton's a great example. So Clayton, one of our employees here, he made Worlds and he actually ended up making the final day, which I thought was amazing. And I think those people, even though they're still very, very good and much, much better than me, they're closer to me. They're like closer to like, there is something beautiful about people like really like scrapping it out to like make that line, to make that cut. And I'm not saying let's like have 4 different cards we're covering of those people, but a recap of like maybe the 10 that are like right in that, let's just do like a recap highlight sort of thing, a video every day. I think that'd be great. And that also, I mean, those are like potentially people that are going to be your top 10 players at some point in their life, possibly, right?
Yeah.
They're just getting started. I mean, Soli was probably down in that area not too long ago. And then where is he now? He's in top. What did he tie for 10th? What was his
tie for 9th?
Tied for 9th. So, I mean, he was down there. I remember seeing scrolling and seeing his name before. I'm like, who is this guy? And then USDGC last year, like, oh, what? Forehand ace, and all of a sudden here he is, So I think it is good to, if you care about the sport and like what the future of the sport is, I think you have to pay attention to that somewhat. So I guess long answer is yes, I would like some, maybe even just a highlight or a recap of the people battling for that every day.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think about it from the standpoint of, I think the pushback would be, we don't have the manpower. We don't have the staff. Mm-hmm. Okay. Position some cameras. Like, give me some camera shots on 16, 17, 18.
Yep.
3 fixed cameras. They're on the green. They're watching. Because you have, like, from what I heard, Clayton had to hit a huge putt on 18 to make
the
cut.
Yep.
That's so easy. Like, we see, okay, he has a 60-footer that he has to make, and it's like, here's a little insight into the cut line. Like, here's him on 17. Clayton coming into hole 17, bogey 17. We have that cut because we see the shot come in. Mm-hmm. Awesome. 1 fixed camera. And then he turned around and made the long birdie putt on 18, and that got him in the cash line. Mm-hmm. Like, all those players, you're going to see those stories. You're going to see those lines. I definitely think it makes it exciting. I think it gives us more coverage potential. It gives more, like you said, storyline potential. Mm-hmm. And once again, I understand if you're telling me that's not possible because of manpower.
Right.
Let's get the cameras going. We audit, once again, I'll be the devil's advocate against my own argument of let's get the cameras going. Cameras are expensive, all that. I understand. I understand there are costs that exist and we have to function. But if we're looking down the road trying to create this long-term product, it can't just be, here are the same 15 guys that we want to hear about every week. And then it's like, oh, Sullivan snuck in. We don't really want to talk about him. Oh, Luke Taylor snuck in. We don't really want to talk about him. Like, okay, let's have the opportunity. And what happens when a major name barely makes it to the cash line? Mm-hmm. Now you already have a process enabled to tell that story as well. Like, what you're telling me if Paul Macbeth barely made cash, people wouldn't be talking about it this event?
It's true.
We would love to see that footage.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it helps create storylines for your up and comers, but it also helps create some excitement for when your big dogs don't eat. So that's World's Recap, ladies and gentlemen. If there's stuff that we didn't talk about or topics that we kind of glossed over that you're like, hey, I'd love to hear more about this in the future, feel free to let us know. But we do have some exciting things because Brad, FoundationDisc.com kind of took a week off last week because there was, kind of a major thing in town. So what's new in the warehouse this week?
So we're getting caught up on a few things. Like we still have Color Glow C-Line Cloud Breakers. We didn't drop those last week. We have them here in the warehouse. So we're dropping those tomorrow. We have all of the Paul Macbeth Discraft like Z line that's coming out. So like Z Luna, Z Hades, Z Zeus, Z Onyx, Z Athena. So that's pretty exciting. We also have like Z Light Passions, which are kind of interesting. Fly Dye Passions, Z Line Kratos. We have a lot of random like Z Discraft that is just kind of new coming out. So, and a Passion restock for all you Passion folks. So that's big. We also, Prodigy has, they call it the Dragon's Horde D2 or D1 maybe. It's in there. It's, some of them are in fractal line. Their artwork's just insane. It looks so cool. It has like a little baby dragon on top of a bunch of gold. Very cool. Also ultralight glow fractal D4s. So that seems like a bomb. Like if you need a little bit more oomph and want to get some more distance, that seems like a good time to me. So that's happening. We're going to do World. Some of the shirts we dropped at World, just kind of some stock ones. We're going to do those as well. We have some new hats hitting. Crazy Caddy is restocked. So all kinds of stuff going. Again, your biggest way to find out what's new is recently restocked on FoundationDisc.com. So make sure you check some of that stuff out this week. And, I know we weren't here last week, but hey, you have plenty of time this week to buy some good stuff. And if you get it in and you like it and it's good, what do we do with it, Robbie?
We keep it in the bag. We'll see you guys next week.